I realized that when you're overseas, whether you book a hotel or a flight or you buy something from anywhere, and now cash is sort of moving away and you use your phone or use a credit card. SubhanAllah, nearly every single time they got scammed and lots of their money got lost from their account. It happened to me, I think twice in my last travels. But I remedied that by calling the bank, and then they sort of paid me back and all that stuff. But what if you don't have all that and you're going to be in strife and lose your money, especially if you're overseas? In this case, I would go with the first opinion of scholars.
Also ruling on the Polish class.
Again, ruling on credit cards is, again, a dilemma for me, Belal. I've heard a lot of the scholars speak about credit cards. One group had a valid point and the other group had a valid point. The first group of scholars said that, yes, you may get a credit card if you can ensure that you will not pass the due date of paying the loan, which incurs interest. But every credit card has that, right? So let's say after 30 days, if you don't pay the loan, they add interest on it. So if you can ensure that you do pay it before the due date, then you're okay. The other group of scholars said, well, that's all good, but the fact that you've signed and agreed that if it goes over the due date, you are prepared to pay the interest, you've agreed to that. Just agreeing to pay interest, and then when it does come, you will, and then you say, I agree to it, then that is the similar as paying off the interest. Both of them have valid opinion and they talk a lot about it. So to be on the safe side, and this is because I was raised here and I've looked at all this stuff, if there's no real need for you to have a credit card, if it doesn't involve your livelihood in a strong necessity, it doesn't involve your dignity, to protect your dignity in a strong necessity, if it doesn't involve that your property is in danger if you don't get a credit card, or your mental state or health is not in danger, then don't go for a credit card unless it is a high need or a necessity situation. And normally most of us don't need it. But I'll give you an example. One person, he opened my eyes to something. After my travels, I realized that when you're overseas, whether you book a hotel or a flight or you buy something from anywhere, and now cash is sort of moving away and you use your phone or use a credit card. SubhanAllah, nearly every single time they got scammed and lots of their money got lost from their account. It happened to me, I think twice in my last travels. But I remedied that by calling the bank, and then they sort of paid me back and all that stuff. But what if you don't have all that and you're going to be in strife and lose your money, especially if you're overseas? In this case, I would go with the first opinion of scholars, because there is legitimate harm that will come to me by getting the credit card. It will save me from ida'at al-mal, from people scamming me. So instead of using my real card, he put it into that to safeguard. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Tfaddal ya akhi.
Regarding a mortgage loan. Okay, you work in a company holding a certain position. Benefit given to you that the company will pay the interest. You only pay the principal. So is it haram?
The company, is it your company or someone else's company?
No, not my company, but you work in a company.
You work for a company. You're an employee,
Yeah.
and they pay the interest and you pay the principal.
Yeah.
But you have to sign something, don't you? You have to sign something. You have to consent and approve.
No, this is given as a benefit because we hold this.
They offer it as a benefit. You don't ask for it. And you don't sign any contract of interest with the bank.
As long as they say you get this position.
Okay, so the company themselves offer it as part of the incentive or part of your work, benefits of the work, and they say to you, look, we'll buy the house and you just pay us the principal, and we'll pay the interest. So long as you haven't signed to agree to that transaction, then it's okay. You understand what I'm saying?
So why does he lose his job? Why does he lose his job?
He loses his job because he didn't take the incentive. I've heard.
Took it. Runs down the check, he loses his job.
Yeah. So if you lose your job, what happens to the house if it's not paid off?
No, and then if you left the company, then you would, between you and the bank, you have to set.
Then it's between you and the bank. There you go. It comes back down to you. That means you did sign the contract with the bank. That's a three-way. Yeah, that's it. one of those.
It's a benefit. I give it to you.
Here, now we change the name from interest to benefit. And secondly, we wiggled around. So part law. Yeah. I'll give you another example. Car finance. I go to a car company and they're selling me a particular car brand that they own. It's their company. But I don't have the money for it. So they say, speak to our finance department. Normal finance. So I go to the finance department. The finance department is not the company. They are a third party. They are a separate entity. Their job is to provide money to pay the company on your behalf, and then they collect their money from you with interest. So it's a loan. And that's the same what we're talking about before. Instead of me paying the interest directly, I get them to pay me for it, and then I pay them back more than what they pay. That third party didn't sell me anything. That third party loaned me the money or paid it on my behalf. And that's similar with this company. But if the company themselves bought the house, they say, we paid interest, you just paid the principal, and after you leave the company, it goes back to the company, you're not liable for it, then that's okay. Because there you go, it goes back on you. Allah understand. Yes, sir.
Sheikh, my question is a little bit similar, but being migrant to this country, what are the rulings on buying your first home on mortgage through the conventional banks?
Okay, well, again, I had another brother last week ask me that same question. And in this setting, I can't answer the whole question. It's a very big question.
The reason I'm asking is because there is so much confusion. Most of the scholars are saying it's not good, it's not halal. But some of the scholars, like 5%, you can say in the person.
Allah, yeah, the brother is asking a question that everybody asks. That, okay, if you're a migrant and you want to buy your first house with a conventional bank, riba, and it's your first house, and you've heard some scholars say, yeah, if you're a migrant or in a Western country, you can buy your first house on riba, but only what you need. One thing that people don't understand here is that even those minority scholars who said that you can, on what basis did they say that? So we need to understand on what basis. It's not just any person. They have a very well written, right? I think it's the Islamic European Council, I forgot their name, which was, rahmatullah alayhi, Sheikh Qaradawi was part of. He's a great scholar. And what they said was people living in the West are in vulnerability, they are in a necessity situation. They're in a haja, a need. Based on the necessities dictate exceptions, they can buy their first house if there is no alternative. So they've got many conditions. What people fail to do is they fail to even that minority, they fail to read their conditions. The first condition, there's no alternative. Second condition, you're in a necessity, right? Third condition, it has to be just your first house because you're not doing for business. And fourth condition, minimally what you need. All those conditions go out the window for a lot of people, even with that minority view. And they've got an alternative. They say, no, the Sheikh said. They're not really in a necessity, but they say, I'm kind of the Sheikh said. Number three, they go and get something which has long-term investment. They said, no, it's not sort of before investment. And number four, they buy something really big that they don't need. So even with that minority view, they're talking about haja and necessity. But the majority view, akhi, and here in Australia, alhamdulillah, we have so many alternatives. We have the Islamic finance systems. Now, without going into detail here, I'm not doing advertisement for them. But, you need to go and see them. If they had their scholars who've looked into the whole system and they've endorsed it, then it's on the scholars. They've looked at it, qualified people have looked at it. If you're not comfortable and you don't feel comfortable to go with it, khalas, then give yourself the fatwa and go and get the alternative. A lot of wealthy people now consider renting and investing your money better. I can't believe it, right?
That's why, because one of the renowned scholar from USA, he was saying that when you talk about the necessity, so if you are renting, you are already fulfilling your necessity. Necessity is you just have a roof on.
We can all rent, we can all live. But then some people say, but then the landlord kicks you out. Again, we're talking about future, we're talking about inconveniences, but we're talking about necessity and high level of needs over here when there's no alternative. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I'm very strong on that it is haram, and there really is no necessity generally for the majority of people, and there is an alternative. And even if a person looks at the Islamic finance system and has some doubts in it, it's not very ideal, but the conventional bank is 100% clear that it's haram, and a person doesn't have an alternative, or the alternative is hard, and they can go to the Islamic finance, then they should choose the lesser harm. And if I'm subjected to two options, one is really haram, one is half haram, which one do I go for? If I've only got these two options, I go for the half haram. Isn't that correct? So what's happened now is that we have to use the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And really every person has to look at their own specific situation and go and sit with someone knowledgeable and qualified to talk about their case and see, inshallah, if this applies to them or not. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Of course, this will drag on a long conversation and what about this, what about this, what about that? But this is just in a nutshell, inshallah.